Hi everyone, Armored Pants here, and I have the second video for you in Advanced Gaming, Advanced Blitz Philosophy. I hope you enjoyed the first one. Like the first one, I hope that we will go beyond the norm, what you normally see in these YouTube videos, and actually learn something new. We will discover some new things together. Even if you're an advanced player, hopefully I will point something out or an observation that will help you and improve your gameplay. And if you're new to the game, then I think you will learn a lot from here. Now, there's not much gameplay in this, I have to say. It's more about the intellectual or the philosophical nature of the game. So I hope you bear with me. Now, this is about preparation. And Sun Tzu, he said, every battle is won before it is fought. Of course, that's a bit of an oxymoron, but basically he's saying that preparation is key. Interesting story about Sun Tzu, one of the famous stories about him. He was asked by the king of Zhao province to be his general, to take charge of his armies. But to give him a test, the king asked him to train his concubines, of which there were 360, to become a military fighting force. So these 360 ladies, Sun Tzu worked with them, and they thought it was great fun. They were laughing and giggling. They weren't listening to his commands. So what did he do? Well, he had split them into two groups, and the king's favorite two concubines were leading each of the groups. He had those two concubines executed. They shocked the king, but the next day, when the ladies turned up for their military training, they paid attention. They did exactly what they were told, and they became a formidable fighting force. And the king was so impressed, even though he'd lost his favorite two concubines, that he appointed Sun Tzu to be his general. So what lesson do we learn from this? Well, that Sun Tzu wasn't just a philosophical general. He was actually a real life general, and he actually was quite ruthless. But it was the key to gain this position was preparation. And this is why he said that every battle is won before it is fought. And the same applies to Blitz to an extent. Preparing before you ever push that battle button, before you ever go onto the battlefield, before you ever take out a tank, can be the difference between winning and losing. And even if you don't win, you'll certainly be a significantly better player. So what we're going to do here is go through some checklists, try to give you some discipline around preparing before you go into the battle, so that you go into that battle with the very best chance of winning. So there's a lot of things to do before you ever take the tank out onto the battlefield. And, I've tried to summarize these into some checklists, so we're going to look at those. And the first thing we're going to look at is the tank type. Not the tank itself, the type of tank it is. Is it a medium? Is it a heavy? Is it a TD? Is it a light tank? Because as we discussed before, Blitz is in many ways similar to chess. You have different pieces. The different pieces have different roles to play. Each piece is important. There is no piece more important than another. And each piece has a role to play, and if it doesn't play its role, well, generally you lose. The difference in Blitz is that in chess, every piece is controlled by a single player. In Blitz, each piece is controlled by a different player, so therefore you knowing your role is key, because the others can advise or give you pointers, but you need to execute the movement once you start the battle yourself. So knowing the role of your tank type, whatever tank you choose, is key. Every game starts like this. There's 7 tanks on one side, 7 on the other, and you need to determine what tank you have, not just in terms of the role it plays, but how you support and interact with the other tanks. So if you're a light tank, you need to spot to support your TDs. If you're a heavy tank, you need to go and seize key positions. If you're a medium tank, you need to get out there and scout, flank the enemy later on in the game, etc. and so on. It's about team dynamics and understanding your tank type. So not the type of tank, not the actual tank you have, but the type of tank is key. So here's a preparation checklist for looking at tank type. So first question obviously is, what type of tank is this, especially if it's a new one that you're playing? Am I competent in this type of tank? So maybe you've played only heavy tanks and you decide to go up the French line and you get the AMX electric biscuit. It's a light tank, it's completely different. Are you competent at that type of tank? If not, go and learn what that tank should do. Do you understand the role of this tank type in the game? You very often see guys in light tanks pushing heavy tanks up hills at the start of a game. They think they're helping, but they're not. That's not their role. They're making no difference, and they're actually leaving their team blind by not going out and spotting. Do I know how to complement the other tanks in the game with this type of tank I'm playing? Going back to our previous example, if you're in a medium or light tank, your role is not to push a Tortoise or an E100 up a hill. Your role is to get out there and to spot and to give those big guns targets. Spotting up the enemy is key. If you're in a TD, you have different roles to play. If you're in a slow moving TD, it's to support those fast moving tanks and heavy tanks as they move around the battlefield. Now the specific tank that you're going to play, once you've determined the tank type, is key, because every tank has different characteristics. They all play differently. Some are similar, but they all have unique characteristics. So here's the first checklist you need to look at on your specific tank. The view range, the speed of the tank, its power to weight ratio, its traverse, its reload, its concealment numbers, and its armor profile. Different tanks have different characteristics across all of these. Different tanks have different view range, different speed, different power to weight ratio, etc. The type of tank you're playing, whether it's a heavy, whether it's a medium, whether it's a light, determines often this, but even in those categories, every tank is different. If you take in tier 8, the Super Pershing has a very poor power to weight ratio but great frontal armor. If you take the Panther 2, great reload, decent armor at the front, poor power to weight ratio, very strong turret, very different then to, let's say, French medium tank, which is much faster. If you take the AMX CDC, almost plays like a light tank. So all of these tanks are different, even if they're in the same category. And you need to understand, you need to know those characteristics. You don't just click on a tank and go in and play. That is a recipe to losing, your win rate dropping, and you frustrating your teammates and not playing your role accordingly. So you need to plan, prepare, and perform. Or as the SAS say, the 5 P's. Piss poor planning leads to poor performance, right? So there we go. So you need to understand all of those different aspects. Next checklist, you need to understand the gun system on the tank, the shell types that you have, the muzzle velocity of those different shell types, how to cycle through those shells depending on what and when you're shooting, the reload on the tank, the damage points each shell does, and that differs across different shell types, the pen numbers by each shell type, the dispersion is the maximum deviation. That is the maximum amount that you can deviate from the central point that you're aiming at. It's usually calculated over 100 meters. So if it's 0.3 over 100 meters, it means that you can miss by 30 centimeters. That's the maximum amount that you can miss with. The higher the dispersion, the more likely you are to miss. So you need to understand that. And then your equipment loadout. To use gun runner or calibrated shells, use supercharged, use refined gun, vertical stabilizer, all of these different things, optics versus camo net. That depends on the tank type, the tank itself, its characteristics, and what equipment you load out to maximize the benefit of the tank. So in a TD, you usually choose camo net over optics. You usually choose refined gun over vertical stabilizer, etc. and so on. If you have very high pen numbers, then you can use gun rammer. If you have very low pen numbers, then maybe calibrated shells. But you need to understand the characteristics of your tank, or you will never be able to make those decisions correctly. Now you may be saying, okay, Armored, how do I find out all this information? Well, it's very easily available. There's lots of resources, but I use blitzhanger.com. So it's www.blitzhanger.com. You go in, you type in the tank you want to look for. You can also search by the nation and the tank type, and you get a list and you just click on it. It's very easy. And everything you need to know, all of the things that we've discussed on those checklists are in here. And we're having a look here at the T-54E1. It doesn't really matter what tank it is. The information is laid out the same every time. You can see here on the left you've got the equipment loadout. If you click on the different equipment, it automatically shows the difference that it makes to, for example, if you click on optics on the view range. Provisions also affect the characteristics of the tank, and again, if you click on those, it automatically shows you. So if you click, for example, on Coca-Cola, it boosts up to view range. And of course you can click on the shell types as I'm doing here, click on the gun types, and it gives you all that information we looked at: penetration, damage per shell, shell types, how the different shells behave, their muzzle velocity, the caliber of the gun, dispersion. All of those things are listed here. So there is no excuse for you not knowing those things. Before you play a tank, go and have a look here. The gun depression is here, the gun elevation is here, the power to weight ratio, the top speed forward, the top speed in reverse, traverse, concealment. Everything you need to know about the tank is here. And you need to understand that you need to know your tank intimately, every aspect of it, or else you will perform below par. You won't perform to the maximum of your abilities. If you don't know whether your tank has good power to weight ratio, you won't know how fast you can accelerate up a hill. You won't know if you can circle a death effectively. If you don't know its dispersion and its aiming time, you will have no idea, if you're doing peek-a-boom, when you pop out, how long it's going to take to make your shot count and for it to pen. And if you rush shots, then you will miss them. I was talking to one of our clan members who had just gotten the Kampfwagen 70, the tier 9 German tank, and he couldn't hit anything with it. And I said to him, and this guy's a good player, and I said to him, well, did you go into Blitz and check out its characteristics, its aiming time, its dispersion, all of that? And he said no. He went and did it, and the next thing, he was much improved because he now knew the characteristics of that tank and adapted his game style accordingly. So you see the armor profile is available here, so you can very easily see the armor profile, if you can side scrape what the relative armor numbers are by angling, where it has strong armor, where it doesn't, if it's vulnerable. You can look at the gun on the tracks, you can see if there's spaced armor, all of that stuff. This helps you then when you're angling, when you're trying to make shots, when you're trying to bounce shells, bounce damage. It also knows what parts of your tank are most vulnerable and what you should cover up, etc., etc. It's basic. It seems like this all seems very basic. I guess some of you are sitting there listening going, well, yeah, I mean, I know this. But because it's different in every tank, the subtle differences of knowing whether the gun depression is 10 degrees or 12, all these things can make that small amount of difference that can make the difference between a shell penning or not penning, between you bouncing and not bouncing, between you being able to align your gun with the target and not being able to align your gun with the target. All that information is available here. Now this may seem like a lot of work, particularly if you're somebody who plays a lot of tanks, but if you want to do better in a tank, and if you want to improve your gameplay, and if you want to be consistently better and consistently to influence games more, then you need to do that preparation, and you will definitely benefit from it. And there are some additional skills that cut across all different tank types and all different tanks, and we're going to have a look at those as well. This is going to be, let's say, a checklist for specific skills. Some people talk about them a lot, some people don't talk about them. Some of them you will have heard of, some of you may not have heard of. I'm not going to describe what every one of them is here, but they are all described in my guides. So the guide to the medium tanks, the tank destroyers, light tanks and heavy tanks, all has each of these skills described in detail. So in the light tank guide, do I know how to spot? Do I understand spotting mechanics? The difference between my view range, my concealment numbers, those of others. How does camo work? How do I reset camo? Do I know how to make tracking shots? Some people don't. Do I know how to do deflection shooting? Do I even know what deflection shooting is? Do I understand camo mechanics? Very closely related to the ability to spot and to also hide and to camouflage yourself with your TD. Do I know how to angle my tank? Do I know how to side scrape? Do I know what either of those two things are? Do I know how to go hold down? These are probably things that you've heard of. You see people talking about them in forums, maybe seen them in other videos, but do you really understand what they are? All of these things are described in all of the guides that I have. So again, it's about preparation. If you're going to move from heavy tanks to light tanks, go and look at, well, hopefully my light tank guide or another light tank guide by somebody else, and understand exactly what you should be doing in a light tank, what your role is, what is the toolkit that you've been given with these tanks, which is different to the previous type of tanks that you've played, that allows you to be an effective spotter and scout, an effective light tank player. If you're moving from light tanks to TDs, again the same thing. You need to know how to do deflection shooting. You need to know the equipment that you need to load out, for example a refined gun and supercharge, etc. That will enable you to be an effective TD player, and it's very different to how you would have set up your tank as a light tank player, and very different type of game style. So go and have a look. Again, this is all preparation before you even hit the battle button. Now we're going to have a look a little bit about game philosophy. Now there was a fantastic post on one of the forums, actually forgive me, on one of the Facebook pages by Ali Taf Babar, who was a very insightful Blitz commentator. And I'm going to get to what he posted exactly in a second, but before that let's look at another famous military quote, this one by Joan of Arc. All battles are first won or lost in the mind. Now what does she mean by that? And obviously you can't win a battle in your head, but if you have prepared and you believe that in your own abilities and you have confidence in your own abilities, then you have a very good chance of winning. You see this in the modern context with boxers. In the weigh-ins, in the pre-match marketing and promotional stuff, they're all very, sometimes almost arrogant. But this is them winning that fight in their head. Now, the opposite of this, and this is what Ali Taft Barber was talking about, is Dunning-Kruger effect. The Dunning-Kruger effect is basically it's a psychological term which basically applies to people believing they're better at something than they are, or have more skills than they do. And if you look on the right hand side, it's graph there, right? So you have confidence against actual knowledge and skills. Huge amount of confidence, but a lack of knowledge and skills, a lack of preparation leads to what they call that peak there on the left hand side is Mount Stupid, right? Don't conquer Mount Stupid, right? Don't believe because you are brilliant at tier 5 heavy tanks and you're a whiz in the KV1 that when you go to tier 10 and you, let's say, play the IS4, the IS7 who are in the KV line, that you then all of a sudden should win there as well and have the same stats. And then when you don't, you're complaining about matchmaking, about game fixing, about pay to win and all this other nonsense which doesn't exist. Don't be Dunning-Kruger. Don't believe that skills are automatically transferred, and because you're brilliant in light tanks you should be brilliant in TDs, or because you're a brilliant heavy tank player you should be a brilliant medium tank player. Don't become Dunning-Kruger. Don't let the Dunning-Kruger effect ruin your game. Prepare. Don't assume that you are going to be brilliant at one thing because you're good at another. Just don't. Please prepare. Go and check out how to play light tanks if you're moving into light tanks from being a TD player, or if you're moving from a medium to a heavy tank. Go and check out the role that you should be playing, how it's different to the tanks you've played before, and once you understand that, check the tank you're playing in detail. Go through all the checklists that we've looked at here. Discipline yourself, make sure it's rigorous. I want to give you one example on real life. When one of my previous jobs, I was doing mentoring for 2 people on my team, both salespeople, one guy, one girl. The guy said that he had just finished his masters and he knew everything and didn't need any mentoring. So I said, okay, fair enough. The girl said, absolutely, I want to learn everything that I can, and if I can learn from your experience, that's even better. The guy left our company, went off to a higher paid job, but doing exactly the same thing as he'd been doing in our company. The girl stayed, became the very best at what she did in our company, and now she runs her own really successful business in Budapest. The guy, and this is like 7-8 years later, is still doing the same thing as he was doing 8 years ago. And what is that? Well, it's Dunning-Kruger. It's the belief that you know everything. And then if you believe you know anything, you're never going to learn anything else, and you're never going to advance. Which takes me on to the next piece of game philosophy, the Peter Principle. The Peter Principle is somewhat related to Dunning-Kruger, and it's also something which appears in business. And basically, it's the principle that you get promoted on abilities, but sometimes you get promoted to a point where you are no longer capable. So let's say somebody is a good salesperson, they have very successful results, they get promoted to become a senior salesperson, do very well at that, get promoted to become a sales director, do very well at that, get promoted to become a CEO, but they have absolutely no strategy or management skills and they fail. That's the Peter Principle. Applying this to Blitz, what does it mean? Well, it means that, let's say you're brilliant at tier 8 and you just assume that you're going to be brilliant at tier 9 and tier 10, you go up and you fail. And why? Well, you've reached the Peter Principle. You've reached where a level of competence so that you can't go beyond. Now, sometimes you can use training, etc., to go beyond your Peter Principle and to actually become effective. But sometimes you have to recognize your limitations. For example, there is no shame in not being able to play a gorilla tier 10, even though you may be a very effective 7 or 8 tier TD player. It's just different. And but if you keep forcing it when it's something that you're not good at or you don't have the skills right now, you're going to fail, and you're going to start going on about fixing and matchmaking and all those things. So don't become Dunning-Kruger and don't become Peter. Now, if you've done all of that and you buy into it and you've done your checklists and your prep and all of that, there's still some prep left. This prep is after you hit battle. When you're going into the game, there's still the setup analysis or the greens and red list analysis to do, and you need to be disciplined in this too. Now, really, really good players do this automatically. They don't even think about it. I hope it's something that you are doing, but if you're not doing it, then you need to actually force yourself into doing it. And we're going to have a very quick look at a setup analysis and what you should be doing after you've hit the battle button, but before the game starts. In that, whatever it is, 30 to 60 seconds you have, you should be doing your checklist setup. So you need to count the fast movers. The fast movers are the lights and meds on your team and on the opposition team. Count the TDs, count the heavies. Assess this data vis-a-vis the map that you're on, and assess then and determine what is the likely initial deployment, bearing in mind the number of channels. If you take a supremacy map, because it's good because it identifies the channels A, B, C, you get 3 channels, sometimes just 4, A, B, C, D, right? Assess the number of channels, and then you have a good idea maybe of how the initial opening part of the game is going to unfold. Based on that, you develop a plan. Second most important thing is communicate that plan to your teammates. Tell them what you're doing. If they don't know what you're doing, then they can't adapt accordingly. They can't support you. As the game unfolds, then adapt based on the feedbacks and observations you make during the game. But before the game even starts, go through this checklist mentally every time. You're not going to get it right every time because people behave differently. You can't control other people's actions. But believe me, by doing this, you will have a much better start to every game. And if you have a good start to a game, then you have a better chance of winning that game. It's simple discipline. It's a simple thing to do. But you need to maintain this discipline. Make sure you do it every time. Do this mental exercise before the game starts. Counting the lights and meds, counting the TDs, counting the heavies. Look at the map, see the channels, and see how the game is likely to unfold. And then, of course, communicate that plan. So often in games, players don't communicate. They don't say anything. How often have you been in the game? The start of the game, everybody sits there and nobody says anything. They don't say go A, go right, go B, spot here, nothing. And then at the start, quite often everybody goes in different directions. And that game is probably lost then before it's even fought. Going back to what Sun Tzu said, the battle is lost before it's ever fought. Because of lack of preparation, lack of analysis, and then last nail in the coffin, lack of communication. If you're not communicating, you can't help your team and they can't help you. So, it's a team game. You need to communicate. Of course, there are players who carry games and they do big damage and all that, but generally, over the course of all the games you play in Blitz, whether it's hundreds or thousands, the majority of those games are won, are lost because of team play, and won and lost because of a lack of preparation. Now let's have a look at this in action. So I'm going to play a tier 7 British Heavy. I've had a look in my garage and I realised that the other tank, the FV, I'm not really sure about all of its characteristics. I haven't looked at it in a long time, so I take out the Black Prince because I know this tank in detail more, so I'm more prepared for the Black Prince. So I take out the Black Prince. Now, my first glimpse at the setup is on the actual intro into the game. What I do now is that I keep the tank menu open while we're waiting players in for the game to start, and now we've already counted all the mediums, all the lights, and the heavy tanks and the TDs. I assess, I look at the map, I know my tank, I combine that knowledge, and I move off towards C, because I think that's where all my team are going to go. I tell them that, and I move off. And in the end, we won that game, and I did quite a bit of damage. I was able to support my lights and medium tanks as they captured C. Now, we're going to have a look at some gameplay and vineyards. Now, I'm in the tier 8 French premium tank, and what we're going to do here is look at a combination of all of the things we talked about before. So me understanding the role I should be playing. So I'm going up here to cap, one of the key things you should do in a medium tank. I'm also going to see if I can try to spot, and I'm also trying to support my ally who is going to spot in the middle. So see if he spotted up, then we could get a shot in and help him out. And now I'm capping. Now this game turns out to be a mastery game, but it's a mastery game that literally any Blitz player, even somebody with only a couple of hundred games under their belt, could get if they did the preparation correctly, because I do nothing in here spectacular. I only do just over 2k of damage. I don't kill a lot of tanks. I don't do anything particularly brilliant or amazing. What I do is I follow the rules of preparation. I understand my tank, its role, its fire system, its power to weight ratio, its speed, its armor, everything, its gun system, and I just play that simply by the numbers, effectively not doing anything spectacular at all, and that delivers a mastery game. And as I said, it's a game that really I think any Blitz player could have done, because I don't do anything spectacular or different or unusual here. I simply really just follow the rules, paint by numbers almost to a mastery badge. And you know what I'm doing here is I'm keeping the enemy spotted up. I'm keeping the T-54 spotted up. I'm keeping the T-28 Defender spotted up, so my allies can put in some damage, so I'm getting XP for that. I'm stopping them advancing past A towards B, so that they can't take our base, because it's a supremacy game. So if they capture B, and you see very often, by the way, on this map in particular, if everybody goes towards the city, they effectively give up either A or B, whichever side of the map they spawn on. They get C, but then the allies have their enemy has, the Reds have A and B, and they lose the game on points because they can't get out of the city. And if they go to do that, they have to go into open ground. The Reds have the high ground at A and B, and they just pick them off. So particularly in this map, keeping the enemy away from B is very important. I'm not doing anything spectacular here. I'm just drawing their attention to me. I'm bouncing a few shots, taking a few hits. Now it's about knowing my gun system, switching up to APCR, fluff the first shot, but I know my reload, and I know then I'm going to put one into them here, do some damage. I've also captured their base, given my team a massive advantage, and then I'm able to clear off that T-28 Defender. But again, you know, I did nothing spectacular there. Nothing that can't be done with the preparation, going through the checklist, understanding your tank, understanding the role of your tank, making the right decisions and taking the right actions. And, you know, moving when I should move, you know, spotting when I should spot, keeping enemies players spotted up when I should, capturing base when it should, defending the base and not allowing them to move. Just understanding the role of my tank type, understanding my role, understanding the strengths, weaknesses of my own tank. You can see there, just over 2k of damage, but nonetheless a mastery badge because I did all of the right things at the right time. And I didn't do anything spectacular in that game, nothing. If you're watching this game and you're an experienced player, you'll know I did nothing there that any player can do. And if you're an inexperienced player and you look at this and you go, yeah, I could do that, and absolutely you could. But to do that, and why I was able to deliver a mastery badge doing pretty much nothing spectacular in this game at all, is because of the preparation, understanding my role and understanding the role of the tank. Preparation is all. Remember, the battle very often is won before it's ever fought, and I think that game there is an example of that. I posted this game, by the way, after I did it up on the clan webpage, and one of my clan mates said they're giving away mastery badges for nothing now, it seems. And I actually thought that was the best compliment he could have given, because in the game there's nothing spectacular and nothing that nobody else could do, and he just highlighted that with his comment, right? And it's the banality of that game, it's normalcy, it's sheer normality that actually highlights how you can achieve mastery badges by doing nothing spectacular, by just preparing and understanding the game and your role well. So let's have a recap. Blitz is a team game, and you can't win on your own. You can be a better player for you and your team if you have discipline, and that discipline is around preparation. It is essential. Remember what Sun Tzu said, win the battle before it's fought. Prep your tank type, know its role, know what you should be doing. You're a light tank, it's not to push a heavy tank up a hill. Prep your tank. It's your tool. It's the toolbox you're going to use in the game. Understand how it works, particularly its mobility, its armor and its weapon system. They're all different in every tank, across every tank type. Check your setup. Play your role on the map as it's given to you. Do your assessment. Never think you know it all. Don't become a Dunning-Kruger victim. Don't become a Peter Principle victor. If you think you know it all, you'll never learn. Remember that example I gave you from my own life experience, right? You know, learn and always be willing to learn. Be consistent. Keep the discipline in your preparation and in your setup analysis. You will be a better and more consistent player for it. You'll perform better more often. And isn't that the secret of what we all look for in Blitz, to be a more consistent, better player? So cheers much. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. And I guess all that remains for me to say now is pants off.